Will and Grace star Debra Messing making headlines again after praising her son for sitting during the national anthem at a hockey game. The actress posting this photo with the caption, "Who's crying? I'm not crying. Hashtag Black Lives Matter."
So what is the left getting so wrong about patriotism? Here to react, active duty U.S. Army officer, writer, and commentator Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy, so great to see you here in the new year. Happy New Year to you. And what was your reaction when you saw this?
Yeah. Well, really, I thought about my own family, and I really thought about how can patriotic Americans best respond to these kind of acts of disrespect to the national anthem and to the flag. And I really think that for many of us, we should really be teaching the next generation and teaching others to basically honor and cherish this country. I think that is the best response we can have, is that we can't control what other folks do or how they raise their children, but what we can do is commit ourselves to teaching others a better way. And so I'm so thankful to have grown up in a family that taught me to love this country, and ultimately that's what led me to serve in the greatest army in the world. And so that's something that I cherish. And so when I do have kids someday, I intend to teach them as well.
You know, Jeremy, well, first of all, thank you for your service, sir. You know, and secondly, a lot of Americans, including a lot of the viewers at home right now, they view this kneeling as an affront to patriotism, as an affront to our country, or anti-American. And so my question to you, you talk about future generations. How does this impact them? And how does this impact our country?
I think how it impacts our country is that we have to be on the offense and make sure that we are teaching folks the better way, and we are very intentional about about the way we talk about patriotism. And I think that we just can't take it for granted anymore. We have to be able to instill these values in the next generation and be very intentional about the way we do it.
Jeremy, I want to go to the op-ed that you wrote now. It's a new op-ed, and it involves Disney World's Trump robot being the target of a screaming rant. And the question that we're asking this morning is there really any safe space left from the leftist insanity? Listen to this soundbite first, and then we'll get your reaction on it.
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
And in response, the heckler that you hear saying "lock him up" at the Hall of Presidents there writes, "Anyone that's upset I disrupted a family vacation can check their privilege and consider getting mad about the thousands of children being taken away from their parents because of Trump's racist immigration policies, or the families of the hundreds of trans Americans murdered each year by transphobic and homophobic people, or the negative impacts of the tax bill on poor and middle-income Americans." A lot to unpack there. What say you?
Well, first off, I wrote the piece to really point just at the absurdity at someone that would heckle at what is essentially a children's event at Disney World. I mean, I think that protest politics has somehow reached a new low. I didn't think it was possible, but I think we've definitely reached a new low in terms of how people protest in this country to go to a place like Disney World. But really, and more importantly, his point about privilege, I noticed that a lot of folks tend to use this kind of talking point about, well, check your privilege, basically as an escape from having to address any kind of criticism about their positions on issues. And they kind of just dismiss any kind of criticism as, oh, well, you're just too privileged, you just don't understand. And I think that's really problematic, and I think it's really un-American to disrespect others because you think they're quote-unquote privileged.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of that happen on college campuses as well. And you're a young American. You know, what do you think of that breakdown on college campuses?
Oh, it has gotten outrageous. I mean, I follow quite a bit of the news coming out of a lot of the campuses in our country right now. And I mean, just the absolute hysteria, the violence. And I think the worst thing about it all is that, as we have seen time and time again, a lot of the college administrations are not cracking down on the violence, especially if it is against conservative groups. And I think that we need folks on both sides to take a strong stand against any limits on free speech, and especially on college campuses should be absolute safe havens for free speech.
Finally, Jeremy, after a fairly tumultuous 2017, what advice do you have for your fellow Americans here in 2018?
I think the absolute thing we have to remember going forward is that we can't always change how others view our country or how others do things, but what we can do is that if we understand American values, if patriotic Americans want to make an impact, we just have to keep on instilling those values to others and keep on having great positions and having great defenses for why we believe what we believe and why these values are so important, and continue teaching that we live in the greatest country on earth, and we have to keep on reminding folks that we are so fortunate and blessed to be in this great country.
Well said.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for your service, and Happy New Year.